How can a robot become the emotional anchor of a show? Why did a brilliant space adventure suddenly revolve around talking vegetables and invisible llamas? And how did a character not even in the original pilot end up becoming the soul of the entire series? These aren't just quirky facts. They're the beating heart of one of television's most unpredictable sci-fi phenomena. Lost in Space wasn't just about a family drifting through the stars. It was about chaos, charm, and some of the most wonderfully strange decisions ever made on a TV set. At first glance, the show looks like cheerful 60s nostalgia, with catchphrases, shiny costumes, and campy outer space drama. But the deeper you go, the more outrageous and oddly moving it becomes. Originally launched as a serious sci-fi drama, the show quickly transformed into something no one expected. It began with a pilot episode so drastically different that it didn't even include the robot or the infamous Dr. Zachary Smith. The original story, titled No Place to Hide, focused on a straight-laced family mission gone wrong after a meteor storm. It was serious, it was grounded, and according to network executives, it was missing something. That something became Dr. Smith, who was added in later as a villain. But instead of staying evil, actor Jonathan Harris morphed Smith into a comically self-absorbed, witty, and cowardly icon who stole every scene. He even managed to negotiate a unique credit in every episode, special guest star. It was a bold move, and it worked. Dr. Smith didn't just cause trouble for the Robinsons. He made the show unforgettable. Then there was the robot. Built at a jaw-dropping cost of $70,000, this 200-pound fiberglass and metal behemoth was far from easy to control. Bob May, the man trapped inside it, had to operate blinking lights using his head while walking blind and sweating in a suit with almost no air. His pain, however, gave birth to magic. The robot's now iconic warnings and gestures became as much a part of the show's identity as its space missions. The voice behind the robot, Dick Tufeld, was also the show's narrator, lending every episode a powerful sense of importance, even when the story went completely off the rails. And make no mistake, Lost in Space absolutely went off the rails. Take the infamous Great Vegetable Rebellion. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. In one of the most bizarre episodes ever aired, the Robinson family was threatened by a giant talking carrot named Tybo. To make matters worse, Tybo had the power to turn humans into plants. The episode was so absurd that its own writer, Peter Packer, reportedly tried to keep the script away from Jonathan Harris out of embarrassment. And if that wasn't surreal enough, a llama was actually supposed to be part of the cast that week, but its wild behavior forced the crew to remove it from the set. The chaos behind the scenes mirrored the nonsense on screen. This episode aired just 1 week before the show was cancelled. Fans and critics still debate whether that carrot helped kill the series, but there's no denying it became an unforgettable piece of TV history. It's easy to laugh now, but these moments show how far Lost in Space drifted from its original tone. And yet, that unpredictability is part of its charm. The show may have started serious, but it evolved into a colorful, comedic, and strangely comforting universe where anything could happen, from alien royalty to haunted spaceships. The props and sets, although built on a tight budget, were cleverly reused and repurposed. Control panels became alien tech. Costumes got a fresh coat of paint and turned into new characters. Even makeup artists borrowed prosthetics from Star Trek, giving Lost in Space aliens an oddly familiar look. These shortcuts didn't just save money. They accidentally connected two of sci-fi's most iconic franchises behind the scenes. Ironically, CBS chose Lost in Space over Star Trek, when both were pitched around the same time. They believed the family-focused adventures would appeal more to general audiences than Gene Roddenberry's deeper, philosophical space explorations. That decision changed the course of television history. And while Star Trek eventually outpaced Lost in Space in cultural impact, there's no denying that Lost in Space brought a unique blend of warmth, spectacle, and lunacy that has never quite been duplicated. Part of that uniqueness comes from its strange but rich origins. Long before the Robinsons launched into space, they had already lived on paper. Lost in Space was loosely based on the 1962 Gold Key comic Space Family Robinson, which itself was inspired by the 1812 novel, The Swiss Family Robinson. Producer Irwin Allen later returned to the maritime source material, directing a 1975 TV adaptation of the original shipwreck story. For Allen, tales of family survival, whether on alien planets or desert islands, were timeless. His obsession with such stories helped shape the emotional backbone of the show. And despite all the camp and chaos, There were very real human stories being told, both on screen and off. Young Billy Mumy, who played Will Robinson, formed a lasting bond with co-star Angela Cartwright, who played Penny. Their connection turned into a real-life relationship, and the two were even briefly engaged after the show ended. Their genuine affection brought an extra layer of chemistry to their roles. In contrast, Guy Williams, John Robinson, quietly stepped away from acting after the series concluded. Frustrated by his shrinking role as the show leaned more into Dr. Smith's antics, he left Hollywood behind and spent his final years in Argentina, away from the spotlight. Behind the visuals, there was even more magic. The futuristic sets, especially the Jupiter 2 spaceship, were designed to feel advanced and sleek. In the show's fictional world, it cost $30 billion to build. In real life, the set alone cost $350,000, a massive amount for a TV show in the 60s. That attention to detail paid off. They even used actual Burroughs B205 computers, real machines from the 50s and 60s, to serve as control panels, blending real-world tech into sci-fi fantasy in ways that helped sell the illusion. It wasn't just science fiction. It felt like a peek into the future. Then there were the costumes. Designed by Paul Zastavnevich, they weren't just shiny or flashy, they were works of futuristic art. Zastavnevich was honored by the Costume Designers Guild in 1968 for his bold use of silver fabrics, geometric patterns, and materials that practically screamed space age. Even as the show shifted in tone, the costumes helped keep it visually grounded in its adventurous identity. The music, too, deserves credit for the show's lasting power. A young John Williams, yes, the same man behind Star Wars and Jurassic Park, composed the show's theme. And even before he was famous, his music elevated Lost in Space beyond its budget. The orchestral score gave scenes a level of emotion and drama rarely found in other sci-fi series of the time. Whether it was a moment of real danger or complete absurdity, the music made everything feel larger than life. It was one of the earliest examples of how a TV score could feel as grand as a movie soundtrack. Of course, not everything made sense. Die-hard fans have noticed more than a few head-scratching continuity errors, like the space launch date of the Jupiter 2 changing in different episodes. No one on the show ever addressed it, and it's just one of the many small inconsistencies that remain part of its curious legacy. But maybe that's part of the magic. Lost in Space wasn't perfect, but it was fearless. It swung for the stars, even when it ended up tangled in a garden of mutant vegetables. One of the most remarkable things about Lost in Space is that, for all its eccentricities, it has never been forgotten. Its strange mix of humor, sci-fi adventure, emotional warmth, and unpredictable creativity earned it a place in television history. Billy Mumy's later appearance in Star Trek Deep Space Nine brought things full circle, a quiet nod to the legacy that began decades earlier in a galaxy not too far away. And the robot, voiced by Dick Tufeld and brought to life by Bob May, remains a symbol of all the bizarre genius that made the show so special. May's grueling work inside that hot, heavy suit was never seen by the audience, but it powered one of the most beloved machines in sci-fi history. It wasn't CGI. It was sweat, buttons pressed by his head, and pure commitment. In the end, Lost in Space is more than just an old TV show. It's a snapshot of a time when television dared to be weird, ambitious, and endlessly entertaining. It reflected the optimism of the 60s, the experimentation of early sci-fi, and the human messiness behind even the most futuristic tales. For every awkward moment and goofy plot, there was creativity, love, and determination behind it. And maybe that's why we still talk about it today. Because buried in the talking carrots, silver jumpsuits, and space disasters are real people, real risks, and real heart. If this deep dive into its secrets made you smile, laugh, or remember something you hadn't thought about in years, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, share it with fellow fans, and hit that subscribe button for more behind-the-scenes treasures from TV history. We've only scratched the surface.